Hey guys, I'm Katherine McNamara and you're watching Cinema Pla'Net.
So, venturing into a show like this must be a big challenge because of such a big fan base and such a passionate fan base. Were there any fears when you first were approached for the role?
There definitely was a moment where I guess I would call it a moment of pause. Because I found out, it was a whole like surprise situation almost when I found out I got the role, and then they told me that about 10 minutes later it would be announced on Twitter. And I had this moment within that 10 minutes where I went, wait a minute, because I had seen Who is Clary was trending, like all of these things were happening, people had been talking about it for weeks, and I had this moment where I went, wait a minute, all of these fans are about to find out that I'm playing this role that they care so much about and have such strong opinions about. I hope they like me. I hope they approve. I hope they accept the fact that this is happening. And I was so thankful and so grateful that they did. As soon as it was announced, they gave me the warmest welcome, and it's been pretty much that since. You know, I love the Shadowhunters fandom because they discuss things and they talk about things and they have opinions and they really care about the show. They're invested in it as much as we are, and that's something that is pretty rare in a world where there's so many stories being told, and it's really lovely. But you know, we do feel a responsibility to bring this story to life in a way that honors the fans of this story in all of its forms.
And were you a fan of the books before you took on the role, or have you read them since?
I knew of the books. I hadn't read them yet, but I started reading them during the audition process. And by the time the show started airing, I had read all 6 Mortal Instruments books. And I fell in love with the series. I love the world that Cassie created. I love this idea where all of these creatures are on a spectrum from angel to human to demon, and there really is... no one is inherently good or evil. It's all somewhere in this gray area, and I think that's such an interesting perspective for even our mundane world as it is.
So I haven't read as much as you. I've only read the first and second book.
Okay.
But what made me passionate about the show was that it went on such a different route that I was there hooked because I didn't know where the show was going.
Right.
And is there something that you prefer from the books, or that you just love that the show did so differently?
You know, there are several elements, and I think the show has found a great way to balance the old and the new. You know, we really try and stay true to the characters, and we try and stay true to the story, but we find ways to make it fresh and make it new for everyone, for even people who know every page of the book by heart. We still try and surprise them, and I think the writers and our showrunners have really found an interesting way of doing that. And the main way they do that is just by messing with the timelines, you know. Everything with Simon happened much earlier, other things happen later. We bring in things from books, the later books earlier and the earlier books later. But it makes for an interesting shift, and it just serves the medium of television more.
And with such a great ending to the second season, what would you, at this point, before teasing anything about season 3, what would you say has been the biggest challenge to Clary as a character?
I think, oh gosh, there have been so many. I think the biggest challenges are yet to come. If I know what's coming, based on what we've shot in 3A and based on what I know about 3B, I think her biggest challenge is definitely yet to come. But up until this point, I think she faced her biggest challenge at Lakeland. And I know I certainly did, both physically and emotionally. Those couple days that we shot that entire sequence were some of the hardest days I've ever had on a set, but probably among my favorite. Just digging in with our director and with our crew and with Dom and Alan, it made the experience so fun. It was so grueling. We were covered in mud. It was raining. We were crying for 10 hours. Like, it was, you know, fighting. Alan and I were throwing each other on the ground. But it was the best because you're just in the trenches with everyone and you're making something that you can just feel in your bones is going to be great. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out.
And speaking of physically and emotionally, you have a very diverse cast and fantastic characters, and you have to play a lot of different scenes. And is there a specific cast member that you like to do the physical stuff more with, and others that you like to do the more emotional stuff with?
That's really interesting. I've never thought about it that way. I have to say, something I love about Shadowhunters is the variety that we get to do. There's never a dull moment, and it never feels monotonous, because we're constantly doing something different. And because we have such a large, diverse cast with which I have different relationships with each person, the on-screen relationships become that as well. You know, each character relationship has such a different quality and brings out such a different quality in the characters. I love the Alec and Clary relationship so much, because they get on each other's nerves just enough to bring out kind of the feisty side of both characters. And I love working with Matt. He's just the greatest. So that's always fun. Simon and Clary's relationship is so great because they have this bond and this friendship where they can even communicate almost without speaking. They just know each other so well. And Alberto and I have been very close from day one as well. I think all the Clary and Sebastian stuff that we saw in 2B was really interesting to see that connection that they had, but without Clary knowing what that was until it was too late. And I think something, you know, the Jace-Clary relationship is something that we've worked a lot on and built a lot through, and that both physically and emotionally. I know, you know, we saw that, you know, this relationship that Dom, Alan, and I had built come to fruition in episode 20, and we really felt that on the day when all three of us just dove headfirst into our characters and played that out as best we could. But then also, I know whenever I have a training scene or a scene where there's physicality to do with Dom, we've spent so much time together and we've trained so much together that we just know how the other person fights and how the other person works, and it makes it a lot of fun.
Okay, so last question. Anything to tease about season 3, whether to Clary or anyone else?
Oh, there's so much. How can I make it concise? Episode 20 was huge. A lot happened. There were a lot of actions taken. There were a lot of choices made, and a lot of big, dangerous choices. And we will see the consequences of those play out in 3A. I don't know what happens yet in 3B because we haven't shot it yet, but the fallout does happen. And there's new villains, there's new weapons, there are new demons, there is a lot at stake, and people get hurt and people get wounded emotionally and physically, and it's brutal, it's bloody. We're all covered in blood most of the season. But there's some moments of love and levity too. So it's all Shadowhunters as you know it, but just, I think, even better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been the awesome, the badass Clary Fairchild, but even above that, the beautiful and talented Katherine McNamara for Cinema Pla'Net. Thank you so much once again.